The last thing Caitlin Stewart saw before the blindfold went on was the inside of a black sedan, leather seats the color of dried blood, windows tinted darker than a wolf's throat. She had saved a mafia boss. She had kissed the dragon. Now she was about to discover if he believed in fairy godmothers, or if he only believed in graves. The cloth smelled of expensive cologne and old violence. It tightened across her eyes with practiced precision, not cruel, but absolute. The kind of blindness that came before judgment in every story ever told. In the dragon's world, misunderstandings didn't end in apologies. They ended 6 feet under concrete. The car moved like a hearse through water, smooth, silent, inevitable. No one spoke. Not the driver, whose breathing was so controlled it might have been rehearsed. Not the man beside her, whose presence was a wall of muscle and unspoken threats. In stories, the heroine always stays calm. In reality, Caitlin's heart was a war drum beating retreat. But she kept her breathing steady, counted the turns. Left, right, straight for what felt like forever. If this was an execution, panic wouldn't save her. If this was a test, and with dragons, everything was always a test, neither would fear. The city sounds faded. No more traffic. No sirens. Just the whisper of tires on pavement and the hollow echo of her own pulse. She thought about her sister, Emma's face, pale against hospital pillows. The way she'd smiled when Caitlin had promised everything would be okay. That lie felt heavier now, pressing against her chest like a stone. What happens to promises when the promise maker disappears? Her hands were steady in her lap. She'd learned that in nursing, how to keep your hands steady when everything inside you was screaming. When the monitor flatlined. When the child stopped breathing. When the family looked at you like you held the keys to heaven. Control what you can control. Accept what you can't. The car finally stopped. Silence hung in the air like an executioner's blade. A door opened. Cold night air sliced through the warmth, hitting her skin with the kiss of winter. She heard boots on gravel. 3 pairs, maybe 4. The crunch of stones beneath predator feet. Metal doors sliding. The industrial groan of a warehouse awakening. Someone's hand, large, impersonal, guided her elbow. Not rough, but firm. The kind of touch that said resistance is futile without saying anything at all. Her feet found concrete. Smooth. Cold even through her shoes. The acoustics changed. They were inside now. Vast space above and around her. The air tasted of oil and rust and something darker she couldn't name. The blindfold came off. She was standing inside a warehouse that smelled of oil and old sins. And the dragon was waiting. Zhang Sangho stood near a metal table under a single hanging light, as if the darkness itself had agreed to frame him. No tuxedo now. No gala glamour. No pretense of civilization. Just black slacks. White shirt. Sleeves rolled to the elbows like a man preparing to get his hands dirty. In fairy tales, dragons hoarded gold. This one hoarded power, and it showed in every controlled breath, every calculated stillness. His presence was quiet the way a knife is quiet in its sheath. Controlled the way a storm is controlled before it breaks. Terrifying the way only truly intelligent monsters can be. The warehouse stretched behind him, shadows and steel beams and the distant glint of what might have been chains or might have been worse. Windows high above, too high to reach, too dark to see through. An empire built on concrete and silence. This was where kingdoms were made. Where debts were collected. Where people who crossed the dragon learned the difference between mercy and survival. His eyes settled on her. Slowly. The way a predator decides whether you're prey or something else. Those eyes. Dark as midnight. Sharp as glass. They catalogued everything. The set of her shoulders, the steadiness of her breathing, the way her pulse hammered at her throat despite her best efforts to stay calm. He was reading her like a book written in blood and bone. "You kissed me," he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes before the flood. It wasn't a question. Caitlin swallowed. Tasted copper and courage. Yes. The word fell into the silence like a stone into deep water. Somewhere in the darkness behind Sangho, she heard movement. Footsteps. The whisper of weapons being adjusted on hips. An audience she couldn't see, watching with eyes that had seen this play out before. How many people had stood where she stood now? How many had walked out alive? Once upon a time, a girl told a dragon the truth. It went about as well as you'd expect. A pause that stretched like a torture rack. Why? Two men materialized from the shadows behind her. She hadn't heard them approach. Of course she hadn't. Dragons don't hire clumsy servants. They didn't touch her. Didn't need to. They stood just close enough to remind her they could. Close enough that she could feel the heat of their proximity, smell the gunmetal and cigarette smoke clinging to their clothes. One of them had blood under his fingernails. Fresh enough to still be dark. In stories, the heroine never shows fear. In reality, Caitlyn's knees were singing hymns of terror. But she held Sangho's gaze anyway. There were two men behind the VIP corridor, she said, keeping her voice level. Clinical. The way she'd learned to deliver bad news to families in the ICU. They said the neurotoxin was active. 60 seconds. The room went still. Not the stillness of peace. The stillness of held breath before violence. Sangho's expression didn't change. Not even a flicker. But something in the air shifted, the way air shifts before lightning strikes. The men behind her tensed. She could feel it like a change in atmospheric pressure. What language? He asked softly. Test number 1. Korean, she replied. He took one step closer. Then another. Each step deliberate as a chess move. His shoes made no sound on the concrete. How did he do that? How did monsters move so silently in a world built on noise? Too close now. She could see the threads in his shirt. Count his heartbeats in the pulse at his throat. Smell cedar and cigarette smoke and something darker, old blood, maybe, or old rage. The light-carved shadows under his cheekbones made him look like he'd been carved from marble by a god with a taste for cruelty and perfection in equal measure. Everyone claims they understand something after the fact, he said quietly. Memory is creative, especially under pressure. He leaned in. His eyes were black holes pulling at her gravity. She could see herself reflected in them, small, pale, so terribly mortal against his careful immortality. What dialect? And there it was. The real test. The one that would decide if she walked out or was carried out. This was the moment in the fairy tale where the heroine either answered the riddle or lost her head. Caitlyn's mouth went dry. Her mind raced back to that corridor, to those crucial seconds before the world tilted sideways. The voices. The cadence. The way certain vowels had been rounded, certain consonants softened. She'd grown up in K-Town. Had worked 3 years at a hospital where half the staff spoke Korean at the nurses' station. Had learned to hear the differences the way a musician hears notes, soul formal, busan casual, jeju sing-song. Busan, she said, and her voice came out barely above a whisper. Coastal accent. The formality dropped on certain verb endings, the kind of slip that only happens when someone's native dialect breaks through High Korean. Specifically, the use of endings instead of in question forms. And the slightly flattened intonation pattern on commands. The silence that followed was so heavy it had weight. Physical. Crushing. Sangho's head tilted. Slowly. Like a serpent deciding where to strike. But his eyes, interest flickered there. Cold interest. Dangerous interest. One of his men shifted uncomfortably behind her. The leather of his jacket creaked loud as a gunshot in the silence. Someone else exhaled, barely audible, but there. Because that detail, that specific, granular detail, hadn't been public. Hadn't been in any report. Hadn't been anywhere except in the mouths of the men who tried to kill their boss. The dragon knew she was telling the truth. Which meant someone in his organization had betrayed him. And now he knew exactly what accent to listen for. Sangho pulled back slightly. Not a retreat. A reassessment. The way a jeweler steps back to see a diamond under different light. You pay attention, he said. Not a compliment. An observation. The kind that could get you killed or kept depending on which way the wind blew. I'm a nurse, Caitlyn replied, finding her voice. Paying attention keeps people alive. Or gets them killed. Sometimes both. Was that a smile? Just there, at the corner of his mouth. Gone before she could be sure. Sangho began to circle her. Slowly. A shark testing the water for blood. In every story, there's a moment when the power shifts. When the princess realizes she's not just a damsel. When the dragon realizes she's not just prey. If you wanted me dead, he said, his voice soft as silk over steel, you could have stepped aside. Let the poison do its work. Walked away clean. Caitlin tracked him with her eyes, refusing to turn her head. Refusing to show the instinct to follow the predator's movement. She'd seen enough nature documentaries to know. Turning your back meant you were running. Running meant you were food. I did step aside, she answered. You were already falling when I caught you. Once upon a time, a girl corrected a dragon. Surprisingly, she survived the next 10 seconds. That earned the faintest flicker of something in his eyes. Not anger. Not yet. Calculation. Reassessment. He completed his circle, stopping directly in front of her again. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back slightly to meet his gaze. Close enough that she could see the faint scar at his temple, nearly invisible against his skin. Old. Professional. The kind you got from surviving something that should have killed you. They all had scars in his world. The ones who lived. Why risk your life? Why indeed? In fairy tales, the reason is always love or magic or destiny. In real life, Caitlin didn't hesitate. Because they were going to get away with it. The answer surprised even her. It came from somewhere deeper than strategy, more honest than survival. It came from the part of her that had been invisible her whole life, watching the powerful play their games while people like her sister suffered in the margins. It came from the girl who'd watched her parents work 3 jobs each and still drown in medical bills. Who'd seen good people ground to dust by systems that didn't care. Who'd learned early that the world was divided into people who made the rules and people who disappeared beneath them. I'm tired of watching powerful people hurt others and walk away clean, she continued, her voice gaining strength. You were going to die. They were going to collect whatever they came for and vanish. No consequences. No justice. Just gone. She paused, meeting his eyes. I couldn't let that happen. Even if she gestured at the warehouse, at the men in shadows, at the empire of darkness surrounding them, this. The dragon studied her face, looking for cracks in the mask, searching for deception like a jeweler searching for flaws in a diamond. Finding none. His eyes narrowed. Not with anger, but with something far more dangerous, genuine curiosity. You're either very brave, he said slowly, or you have a death wish wrapped in altruism. Maybe I was just tired of being invisible, Caitlin replied. And for the first time, the very first time, the dragon's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement. The princess had landed a blow. He turned away, moved to the metal table. Picked up something, a file folder, thick with papers. Dropped it back down with a thud that echoed in the vast space. You lost your job, he said without looking at her. It wasn't a question. It was a statement delivered with the casual certainty of someone who knew everything worth knowing. Yes. Hospital administration called it abandonment of duty. He did turn then, and his expression was unreadable. They're not wrong. You left your post. Followed a stranger. Kissed a man you didn't know in the middle of a medical emergency. Each word was a scalpel. Precise. Cutting. True. Your sister is sick, he continued, relentless. Emma. 12 years old. Leukemia. Memorial Sloan Kettering. Treatment costs running 6 figures annually. Your insurance was tied to your hospital position. Caitlin's breath caught in her throat like a bird in a cage. How do you? I know everything that enters my world, he interrupted, his voice calm as death. Every player. Every pawn. Every piece on the board. You saved my life. That made you relevant. And relevant things get investigated. This wasn't kindness. This wasn't concern. This was surveillance. Dragon's sight that missed nothing. A gesture. The others melted into darkness like smoke. Now it was just them. Princess and dragon. Savior and saved. Predator and, what was she, exactly? The warehouse felt larger with just the two of them. The single light overhead seemed smaller, more intimate, creating a circle of illumination in an ocean of dark. Sang-ho faced her again. The light-carved shadows under his cheekbones made him look carved from marble and malice. He moved closer, always closer, like gravity pulling her into orbit around a black hole. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "That creates complications." "What kind of complications?" "In stories, the dragon either eats the princess or marries her. Reality, as always, was more complicated. The kind where you become valuable," Sang-ho replied. "And in my world, valuable things either protected or eliminated." Her stomach dropped. "Which am I?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her the way a collector studies a rare artifact, assessing worth, calculating risk, deciding placement in his hoard. She held his gaze, refused to look away. If she was going to die, she'd die with her eyes open. That was something. That was more than most people got in his world. "You have a choice," he said finally. "You can walk away. I'll pay your sister's medical bills, clear your debts, give you enough money to start over somewhere else. Somewhere far from here. Somewhere I never have to think about you again." Hope flickered in her chest. Dangerous. Painful. Or you stay. 2 words. They landed like stones in deep water. "Stay," she repeated. "As what?" His smile was slow. Dangerous. The kind of smile that preceded falls from grace. "That depends entirely on what you do next," he said. "But let me be clear, if you stay, you're mine. Under my protection. Under my watch. Under my control." Gilded cage. That's what this was. A cage made of money and medicine and the promise of her sister living. "I don't," Caitlin started. "You do," he interrupted. "You stepped into my world when you kissed me. When you saved me. When you made yourself relevant to my survival. There's no stepping back now. No returning to normal. No pretending this didn't happen." He stepped close enough that she could count his eyelashes. See the faint scar at the corner of his mouth. Feel the heat radiating from his body like a furnace. "People who know what you know don't get to walk away, Caitlin Stewart. They stay, or they disappear. Those are the only options in my world." The way he said her name, like he owned it already, like it belonged to him now. "So choose," he continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Walk away rich but always looking over your shoulder, wondering when I'll decide you're too much of a risk to leave breathing. Or stay, and I'll give you everything you need. Protection, purpose, a place in the organization that actually values what you can do." "What can I do?" she whispered. "You saved my life," he replied. "You noticed what my own security missed. You understand languages, dialects, details. You're invisible in ways that my people aren't, a nurse, unremarkable, someone who can go places and hear things that my soldiers can't." Oh no. You want me to spy for you." "I want you to survive," he corrected. "And in my world, survival means being useful. You're already smart enough to know that." Caitlin's mind raced. Emma's face floated behind her eyes, pale against hospital pillows, brave despite the poison coursing through her veins, killing her by degrees. The bills. Mountains of them. Growing faster than Caitlin could climb. The job she'd lost. The insurance gone with it. The treatment that would stop without money. And when it stopped, Emma died. That was the equation. Simple. Brutal. True. Stay with the dragon, and Emma lives. Walk away, and Emma dies. Some choices aren't choices at all. "My sister," Caitlin said. "You'll take care of her. Everything. No matter what." "Everything," Sang-ho confirmed. "Best doctors. Best treatment. Whatever she needs, for as long as she needs it. You have my word." The word of a monster. The word of a man who pays his debts. His eyes glittered. "I'm many things, Caitlin. But I'm not a liar. When I make a promise, I keep it. Ask anyone who's worked for me." Ask anyone who's still alive, he meant. She looked around the warehouse. At the shadows where his men waited. At the table with its files and secrets. At the single light overhead that seemed to illuminate nothing but darkness. This was the moment. The crossroads. The place where fairy tales diverged into tragedy or triumph. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." "Louder," he commanded. "Say it like you mean it." She lifted her chin. Met his eyes. Let him see that she wasn't broken, wasn't defeated, wasn't surrendering so much as choosing. "I'll stay," she said clearly. "On one condition." His eyebrow rose. Amused. Interested. "Dragons do love it when their treasures show teeth. You don't hurt my sister. Ever. She stays innocent. She stays safe. She never knows what I've become or what I'm doing. She gets to believe in fairy tales for as long as possible." Sang-ho studied her for a long moment. Then nodded once. "Done." Just like that. One word. One nod. A deal with the devil, sealed in a warehouse that smelled of oil and sin. He turned and gestured toward the door. The warehouse doors groaned open behind her. The night swallowed the threshold, cold and infinite and full of uncertain promises. A car waited. Engine purring. Door already open. Different from the first one. Sleeker. More expensive. Because she wasn't a prisoner anymore. She was something else entirely. "The penthouse is ready," Sang-ho said. "Not an invitation. A statement of fact. Your things will be collected tomorrow. For tonight, everything you need is already there." "I don't have things," Caitlin said. "Just an apartment I can't afford anymore and clothes that smell like hospital disinfectant." "Then it won't take long to pack." That almost smile again. "Welcome to your new life, Caitlin Stewart." She walked toward the car because what choice did she have? Once upon a time, a nurse kissed a dragon and saved his life. Now she would learn what dragons do with their debts. And their prizes. And the rare, dangerous creatures who dared to see them clearly.